This is day 2 of the November 95 7-day retreat in Springwater. One person asked, is there another kind of meditation beside concentrating, or rather focusing on something like my breath? Let me quickly say here parenthetically, I do not remember questions that are being asked verbatim. So do not feel misunderstood if the question that is being formulated here in a talk is not exactly or quite like what was being asked. Is there any other meditation beside focusing on something like the breath? Why the need to focus on anything? Because yes, there is another way of meditation, if you wish to use that word. Of sitting quietly, inwardly. There's another way beside focusing. Maybe all of us who are here right now at some time or other have either been trained in focusing or in concentration as a meditation practice, or we have played with it informally without any particular teacher or school telling us what to do. I remember years and years ago, that was long before joining the Zen Center, I read a book by Evelyn Underhill on mysticism. If I remember correctly, in that book I found the suggestion to just look at something without blinking, without looking away. And maybe with that initial enterprise of looking at something without blinking, without looking away, something deeper will open up. I was very interested in mysticism at the time. I remember sitting then in front of a Dieffenbachia, that huge plant that we had in the house, and trying to just look at one leaf, and it was impossible. I didn't even know what looking was. Something seemed very, very remote, impossible. So all of us here, in one way or other, have learned some form of concentration, haven't we? As a starter. To follow the breathing, or maybe even before we graduated to following the breathing, there was counting each inhalation and exhalation, then after that maybe just counting each exhalation. And if we could do that fairly well, these things are never perfect. The mind is so unruly, so impulsive, scattered, jumpy. So if there was a sort of a minimal success at this, maybe one could just sit and follow the breathing or focus on the breathing. And it can be, at least for some people, a wonderful exercise, which has the side effect of calming the mind, for a while at least. It is being used now in some hospitals. There are meditation centers where people, sometimes the doctors have given up of taking care of their pain or anxiety, where people are trained to work with those patients and instructing them to follow the breathing, close the eyes or have them half open. I don't know what that particular instruction is. Sit together in a relaxed manner and follow the breathing. And a lot of patients, so I read, report maybe a diminution of pain or tension. So the questioner asks, is that the only way of meditating, focusing on something? And of course, as we all know, there are other practices beside focusing on the breathing. There are mantras given to one on which to concentrate, or visualizations. Elaborate system of visualization exists in some traditions, which take a tremendous amount of practice and concentration to allow this visualization to build up in the mind. Or concentrating on a concept like loving compassion or the love of God, the union with God or Jesus. In the Rinzai sect of Zen, concentrating on a koan, holding that in the mind to the exclusion of anything else, which takes a lot of practice, training, hardship, till this is momentarily possible. In all of these concentrative or focusing practices, and please check it out for yourself, don't take my word for it. I'm not trying to indoctrinate people or brainwash them. So this, what is being said, is offered for general inspection by each one who is interested. In all of these concentrative exercises, isn't there the emergence of the distraction? If I concentrate, or if my task is to concentrate or focus on the breathing, then the hum of the fan, or the movement of a body, or the calling of a jay or crow becomes a distraction. Don't listen to that. Focus on this. Is that so? Has one had experience with that? With that battle that starts and continues. The battle with the distractions. The battle with that which is not my practice. And these enemies, if you will, are not just the hum of the fan or the crow calling or someone moving or clearing their throat. Is that a distraction? Or is it just simply there? So the foes are not just the jays or the hums or other physical manifestations like a gurgling stomach, but of course this whole network of thinking. Thinking about the past, thinking about the present, thinking about the future, and all that goes with it. The thoughts, the pictures, the memories, the desires, the fears and anxieties, the angers, or jealousies, or lusts and pleasures. So all of that has to be battled with bringing the mind back to the breath. This is how it is usually expressed. I've got to bring my mind back, because there is no going back. There's only this moment. Of what? See, this is what we're asking. Does sitting down quietly for a few days or a week or half an hour have to entail battle between what I should do, what I'm supposed to do, and what intrudes against my will? Because I do want to concentrate. I'm quite willing. So against my will, all of this other stuff intrudes and disturbs. And busts the practice. I remember once I mentioned it this morning, the memory comes up again, while still, no, I was no longer at the Zen Center, but a person from the Zen Center who I had really loved and respected highly. She came for an appointment. I was happy to see someone from Arnold Park appear in Mount Hope. That was the name of our respective streets. And she was, at first, it was, I don't know how long, a time of crying, sobbing, telling me that her lover of many years had left her for another woman. And she said, even worse than that is that my practice has gone to pieces. You're laughing, smiling. Because it's still a familiar ring from the past, or one knows this feeling, my God, my practice has gone to pieces. So all I could say, besides putting my arms around her, this is your practice. The pain, the despair, the anger, the incessant thinking about it, obsessing of what happened. What is it all about? And can that be listened to at such an overwhelming moment, inundated by this stuff, drowning as it were, in pain and upset and feelings and emotions, and cries, outcries, feelings of revenge, all of that mixture of stuff that we're made of at such a moment. Is it possible to begin to listen to it with some space, not totally inundated, some space to listen to all of that? Freshly, from what we called in one of our earlier talks, the eye of the tornado. Which is the center of the world. And wonder of wonders, the breath is also there. It does not mean that this kind of listening banishes listening to the breathing. Breathing is what is probably closest to a human being. Can't live very long without breathing. Can live quite a while without eating or drinking. But breathe we must. So it's there, it's very close, it's very, very palpable, tangible, audible, feelable, seeable. Inwardly one can see maybe. It has some kind of a body image, the chest or the belly extending and contracting. So that's there in the midst of our pain and anger and anxiety and sense of loss and grief. So the point is not, as I see it, to use focusing on the breath to sweep all of that turmoil away, to inundate the inundation, but to let it all be felt, heard, seen spaciously. By spaciously, I mean not instantly some more reaction, some more storyline about poor me. And hearing that storyline that wants to evolve, we want to picture ourselves. It's not enough to suffer, we need to know that we're suffering and paint it and embellish it in novel-like fashion. We live and emote and feel along those lines. Watch it. It'll come into view if you're interested in it. That the moment something happens, there is no longer just the fact of what happened, but the inner reaction, which can come very automatically, very mechanically, quickly. Right? Like on the computer, fresh off the disk comes the reaction to something that's happening. An angry word spoken at us, a word of rejection, and the instant hurt. But it doesn't remain with these two close facts, the hurt, or the word and the feeling of hurt, but thought begins to elaborate on it. It needs to express what is happening to me. And the expression is usually with loaded words, which trigger emotions of more pain, more anger, more feeling of rejection. So one is entangled in a network of reactiveness. Not just the initial reaction of hurt, but the elaboration of that hurt into a network of storyline about me and those others. What they are doing to me, what they have done to me, and what I have to suffer as a consequence of it. Watch it and see the attachment to that story. The hurt, the word is finished. The person has said his thing, not talking. Maybe we're in a different room, in a different place. But the story goes on. And what we're asking here is, can that whole process that we've just described come into awareness? Not as a mechanical practice, but as a living thing, a living happening. And one may find that at a moment of awareness, not just of the word and the reaction, but the elaboration in fantasy. If there is awareness of the whole thing, touch with the real world, if you will, touch with facts is not lost. It's there. The fan is still there. The breathing, the heartbeat, maybe shivers or hot and cold feelings, it's all there. It doesn't get lost when there is awareness of the whole thing. Where there's no awareness, the word is said, the hurt happens, and with the elaboration, the touch with the fact is lost. Maybe the person is still there who said that, but we don't hear him. We may not have heard him right in the first place. He may not have said something hurtful. But already because of a mindset which comes out of previous experiences, a mindset which we call image of that person. He always hurts me, he's always so insensitive. He opens his mouth and we already feel hurt. We can't listen because the mind is entangled in imagery and elaboration and out of touch with a living fact. So that's one of the miracles of awareness, that the reaction comes into view, but with awareness, what triggered the reaction is not lost sight of or hearing of. We can still listen to what he or she is saying, albeit a reaction is noted, but it is noted in awareness. So, we have elaborated on a simple question. Is it possible to listen to the breathing but not make it an exclusive thing? To see whether it's possible, and it's very difficult in the beginning, to see if it's possible that other things like movements of bodies and rubbing of cushions and maybe the wind in the woodwork of the roof, whether it can all be there at the same time. That is the miracle of awareness. Not just the breathing at the exclusion of everything else, but the inclusive listening, which does not need thought to list one thing after another. Because it's only because thought lists one thing after another that it seems that one thing happens after another, or that it's impossible to hear everything, because thought is in there operating, knowing it, naming it, associating, and that makes sort of a time sequence out of something that is happening simultaneously, right now. It's not easy, because they're so habituated to naming everything, knowing everything, saying, oh, this is like that, which is the association of the brain, bringing in memory. Nobody's doing it. All of these things happen. Click, click, click. It's an interconnected network, where the interesting question is, where is the I in all of that? It feels so powerful, so much in charge. Where is it in all of this happening? automatically, without our volition, without our doing. So, because of all of these automatic responses of naming, liking, disliking, associating what I remember or what is remembered, and of course the body responding to every single thought, every single connection elicits also physical, emotional, glandular response. Also, if one has learned, maybe laboriously over time, maybe many years, to concentrate on the breathing, we're taking that as an example. If one has learned that, and now one is managing it fairly well, then one doesn't want to let go of this and listen to something else. This is now what I've learned, what I'm doing when I'm meditating. And it has become ingrained that everything else is distracting, and it is, in fact, distracting from this holding on to the focus. It can be a very unsettling feeling. I remember when, in starting to give talks at the Zen Center, I was asked to do this long before I left the center. But also in later talks, there was seemed to be a division happening among people, those who came to the talks and felt they got something out of it, and those who stayed away. Because it was, some people called it psychologizing. It was not to the point of the koan, or didn't seem to be. So not to be surprised if one has been a good concentrator, not to be surprised at the discomfort, hearing what is being said, trying to see it for oneself, and the discomfort of letting go of the concentrative practice, which seemed to establish some order in this chaos, which is the mind when we first start to observe it, appears as total chaos, particularly in first days of a retreat. Maybe on the last day of retreat. Can break in any time. It may be a moment of stillness, in touchness, what is actually happening, and something upsetting takes place with a neighbor or a roommate, or one gets a note from the supervisor criticizing something, or one feels criticized, one isn't in touch maybe with what the person says, one is so sensitive, wants to be liked and do well, a note, and is one really listening or reading impartially, still there, even though reaction makes itself felt in the belly. So, can one be with the whole thing as it unfolds, moment to moment? And also let be the discomfort at not knowing what to do, what to look at. So often people bring this question: what shall I look at? This or that? What first? What's the priority? There's no priority. There's only what is. What is it? This moment of despair or confusion. That's what is at this moment, despair and confusion. Let the label go, and what is it? usually wanting something different from what is. I want to know what to do. I want to be orderly, neat, and not face this chaos, which is the human mind, a good deal of the time, if it's not under some structure of concentration. Or awareness, attention, that brings a new order into chaos. Without doing, it's just listening to a creaking limb and a singing jay, and breathing, the coolness of the air, the heat of the body, spaciously. Spaciously meaning not needing to judge anything, good or bad, not needing to reject anything, and not needing to accept anything either. Let it be. One person said, listening to the first two talks, I got more of a feel of what you're saying. I understand it better. It has become clearer. Is that why we sit still? Was the question. The question that went on. Is that why we sit still? To let things come into awareness. I actually am a very fidgety person. I would like to move, but I don't want to disturb the neighbors. They're all sitting so quietly, motionlessly. So is it really possible to let fidgetiness come into view, into awareness, as it manifests? When there's no awareness, there's fidgetiness. No awareness is the running of habits, physical, mental, psychological, emotional. But the moment some light dawns, some awareness comes in, then it's not just the itch, but the urge to scratch becomes transparent. No awareness, and we scratch. Some awareness, and the itch and the urge to scratch come into view. They become transparent. And then some experimentation can take place. What if I don't scratch? Maybe in order not to disturb the neighbors, or I'm interested. I've never, ever completely, from beginning to end, observed an itch. One says to oneself, what is it? And the urge to react is there. It's in view. It's transparent, but it doesn't need to be acted on. And with continued awareness, what happens? Most of the time, I won't say all of the time, it's a dangerous thing ever to say. Most of the time, the itch subsides, and so does the urge to scratch. It's come and gone in the light of attention. As we move around in habit without awareness, those things don't come into view. As we sit quietly, maybe we've all agreed, at least We don't all sign an oath or an agreement. We don't sign a contract, but we have more or less agreed to, in ordinary sitting rounds, to sit quietly. And things reveal themselves in an amazing way. Not that awareness comes automatically with sitting quietly, or with itches, or thoughts and remembrances and anticipations. Most people say most of the time there's very little awareness. But we slight the moments that there is a waking up to the fact that fantasy has been running for the last half hour or so. We wake up to it. And then we slight it, because at the moment of waking up, what is usually happening, a response, a reaction comes up. I shouldn't have dreamt. I should be doing more retreat work, or whatever way one formulates it. I'm a hopeless case, or in the last retreat I was doing so much better. And with that, the awareness is gone. The clouds have closed up and don't become visible. Reactiveness without awareness continues and carries on and has side effects. And the side effects create new thoughts. I mean physical side effects. So, we're talking about it here right now, quite emphatically, because the next time there is a moment of awareness, there's no need to comment on what is revealed in memory, what just happened. The dreaming, the fantasizing. Just a moment of awareness, and the desire to judge also becomes transparent, and therefore does not need to continue. And then maybe the hum of the fan, the breathing, some sounds coming from other people, breathing, coughing, is there without embellishments needed. Now, please may I add this at the end of this talk. I'm not saying you must be more attentive, or you must not react. You must not concentrate. Some people tell me they like at the beginning of a round to focus on the breathing, and then other things come in, but that's what they do. Or a whole first day or a second day. I'm not telling anyone what to do. Feel free to do what you need to do. I'm just talking, and maybe something happens in a talk or as a consequence of a talk, I don't know. It happens quite on its own. We will end here for today.